Welcome, Impactful Parents. It's time for the Impactful Parenting Podcast, where I give you parenting tips and resources to make you a more impactful parent to your school-age child. I am your host, Christina Campos. Welcome, Impactful Parents. Today we're going to talk about how parents can use the simple act of reading as a way to grow a better relationship with your child at any age. Hello, my name is Christina Campos. I'm founder of The Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school-age children who want to be one step ahead of their kids to turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I'm a mom of four, a teacher that's taught every grade from preschool through high school, and today I help moms and dads like yourself to navigate that exhausting, confusing, frustrating, but rewarding world of parenting. So welcome to The Impactful Parent. And today I have a special guest. His name is Louis Papadakis. And Louis is a parent, a dedicated stepfather, and a child's book author on a mission to empower kids to be resilient and confident through books. And Louis has a special relationship with books that also has impacted the relationship that he's had with his stepchild that's made him the best bonus dad. I just really hope that you can get a lot out of this episode to inspire you and to revisit the pages of books in a whole new way. Thank you for being here. Well, I'd like to start off first with your story of how books and writing has influenced your family.
I'll tell your guests and everybody the night that changed everything for me. So the woman I was dating at the time was currently my wife. A couple of years back, I got into a relationship back then. I'm currently married to her, and as a result, I adopted a child. His name was Nicky, an awesome boy, about 3.5 years of age at the time. And my wife had the brilliant idea of, why don't you start, break the ice by reading him children's books. So I started with that. It was a brilliant idea. But I'll tell you, one particular night, she sent him off to bed, and she told me, why don't you go read him a book? I said, okay. So I made my way to this bedroom first. And I remember, I get emotional just thinking about this. I was in his room, prepping his bed, getting his sheets ready, his, favorite, I think like Iron Man. He was into the Marvel comics at the time. His bed sheets, they're into the super men, the Avengers. And the book that I picked that night was Goodnight Moon. It's an old classic, by Margaret Brown, and very, very simplistic drawings and all that. I put him to bed. He came to bed. He was real tired, and I remember that night. But they're tired, but their eyes are still full of anticipation when there's it's time to read a book. Started reading him the book, and as his breathing slowed down, I realized he was falling asleep. I quietly stopped reading, and I kissed him, on his soft hair, and I told him, and I started backing up out of the room to close the door. On my way out, I told him, good night, buddy, I love you. And before I even made it to the door, with his eyes closed, he goes to me, I love you too. And that just hit me like a lightning bolt. I'm telling you, it was just like, I guess that's when I realized that it wasn't just stories. I was creating a bond. I was creating a bridge. I was shaping a child's childhood, and at the same time, I think I was shaping my fatherhood as well. That was the point when I realized that I didn't just want to read stories. I wanted to create them. I wanted to write them as well. I wanted to replicate that bond. I said to myself, if I can create this in every household out there, if I can create this in only one household, that to me is a mission. So that's how I got started on this, because my why became big enough. I always could draw, and I always tinkered with the idea of doing it, but it wasn't until I became a father. It found me. I didn't step into it. It stepped out. It found me, that it gave me that life's purpose. I think that, my stepson today he's my son. There is no step in the relationship. That's what I tell him. And I guess we found each other. It took a child. I had a fine arts degree, but it took a 3-year-old that I adopted to make me realize what I can do with my talent.
Oh my gosh. And I love reading to my children. And let me clarify that I love reading to my teenagers. I love reading to my middle schoolers. I love reading to my older children. And it's a shame that parents tend to stop reading to their children once they get into school age, or once they know how to read themselves, then all of a sudden we stop reading for them and we encourage them to read on their own, when we are missing a huge opportunity as parents to bond with our kids, just to sit there. And so I love this whole topic of how we can use reading to really elevate our parenting, because it is such a great tool. So I'm going to ask you, how is it that you have used storytelling as a tool to teach your children different, different lessons in life, and or problem solving, or anything that they need to learn? I mean, I know for myself, my oldest son is dyslexic.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I was even reading to him in high school, which I loved because it was just easier. I was just trying to help him, and it was a time that we actually got to bond over. So I got to read all kinds of cool things to help him learn all different kinds of things. But I mean, even the kids that didn't have reading difficulties, my older children really found that this was a special time in our day, just to snuggle up on my lap and put their head down and listen to their mom. Just sit and listen to me and my voice and the story. And so I got to pick all different kinds of cool topics to teach them about
Right.
as they got older with this. But how have you done this?
I'll give you 3 more concrete examples that I know, because I base my characters on that. It's not just fun with my children's books. I try to bring value in multiple forms. So I like my characters to display a certain. They're kind of unsure of themselves initially, because I want a child to be able to relate to the character. But then it ends up, after taking conquering a challenge, they develop confidence. I think that's key. I think when a child sees their main character that they relate to overcome something, they can relate. They think they can do it too. They get that self-belief that they can do it too. So that's one. Resilience, as whimsical as a character can be. There's multiple books out there. Curious George the monkey. An older one is Donkey Donkey. It's like really wacko characters. Now, what I'm trying to say is whimsical as a character can be in a child's book, there's always a hero's journey. They run into something, they struggle, and then in a funny way, they get their way out of it and they succeed at the end. So when a child sees in their favorite children's books that failure is part of the journey, as part of success, that's key. I think as adults, we're still trying to learn that,
Yeah, we
So
are. Oh my gosh, such powerful lessons. Yes.
yeah. So confidence, resilience, empathy is a big one. Empathy is a big one. Again, children's books have crazy characters in them. That's how it draws in children to even look at it. Funny things are going on. But those characters at the same time have a wide perspective on life. And so it's really important for the child to be able to have that wide perspective on life and empathize with the world. So those 3 are key to me. I use them as a framework for my funny characters and stuff. A lot of times in my house, we say stuff like, what would your favorite character do? I write a book about Gertie the giraffe. Like I told my, what would Gertie do in these circumstances? Because the kid has a reference point to be able to model that. So those are some of the tools.
I love that. And you know what I'm going to reiterate that I just want that you're basically saying is that, yes, you can get books like I did that have subject matters, and we can teach our kids all cool kinds of cool things, by reading to them. But don't forget that you can also teach your children through books some of those things that are not quite as tangible. That social emotional learning, like that you're bringing up, that resiliency, the empathy, those kinds of lessons are so often best told through books.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yep.
not to forget that. We can't forget that. And so if we have a child that's having trouble sharing, having trouble empathizing, having trouble just understanding why one kid in their class has an IEP and gets to take longer on tests and they don't get to, they have to get it done in a certain amount of time, anything like that, we can now find a book on. And I think we just need to, as parents, utilize our resources a lot more. This is really exciting.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, how has your parenthood influenced how you tell your stories?
Ooh, that's well, it's about it's bonding. If there is one word that I can throw out there, it's bonding. It's so that it's made the why, that deep. I realize that it's not just words on a page. It's about the presence. Let me explain. There's a lot of times where we would read something and I would notice that, not my books. This was before, I'd read children's books before, I got initiated in this. I got thrusted in this. So I would notice that my child, while, I look at him, he wouldn't be looking at the book or how well I read the story that I was reading. He would be noticing the tone of my voice or listening to me. And those would be the moments I realized that it wasn't really about the story. It was about him sharing the moment with me, so that the tone of my voice, just being there, just away from time, away from distractions. And it's like the child saying to you, right now, mom, right now, dad, right now, stepdad, I have you. You belong to me. And I'm not a child psychologist by any means, but I'm an observant dad. I'm an observant stepdad. And what I know is that when a child, that predictability of that shared time with the child fosters that emotional security. So there were big reasons why. That's how deep the reasons why I do is what I do. It's like it goes into that. And like I said, not that I had that scientific knowledge, but you got that gut feeling that you are helping.
That's right, you do. What advice would you give to parents who want to nurture that creativity and emotional intelligence in their kids through books?
I would say let the story go beyond the book, meaning that when we ask a child, sometimes we wouldn't finish a story that night, or we would finish it, and then the next day I would ask the child, I would ask my son, uh, what do you think your character, the book that we read yesterday, would do differently if they had more courage? Or what do you think they would do? What do
Ooh,
you think if
good question.
Gertie yeah, what do you think if the giraffe did, if she was a little bit more shy? You think she would have did this? So that's bringing them. I think kids by themselves, they don't just want to consume stories. I think they want to create them as well. They want to be part of it. And I think that's the way that we as parents can engage them into the world and not just, uh, just be observers, like bring them in and be hands-on with that. So that's the game that we would play at my home.
Great. And it brings another level into what parents can be doing here, not just reading, but it's beyond the book too. It's, starting conversations at dinner and saying, yeah, I love it because it gives you more to talk about in those
Yep.
times and more learning to be had.
Into the creative lens and just gets them engaged in the world, not just passively.
Right. Yes. And that's really when the magic happens, right? That's when they start to really think outside the box and internalize some of those lessons that the book was trying to teach to begin with. So it's awesome. Tell me about your books. What is it that you write about specifically?
Well, I'm on a book series currently. I started with I wanted to pick a funny character. So I mean, I've as a young kid, I used to go to the zoo, and the most magical animal to me was a giraffe. And the reason being is because I thought giraffes were magical because they just seemed to be at two places at the same time. You're like, I was a little kid and they're like, their body was like right there. Like, I'll give an example. The body would be right there, the hooves, the feet and everything, but the head would be all the way up there, like into the clouds. And I actually incorporated that subconsciously without knowing that in one of my skits. So it's like, you know, here I am over here, but here I am over there as well. So
Yeah.
And then they have these long stretchy necks that you can twist and turn and do, put them in all sorts of funny situations when it comes to visual stuff, in illustration. So I write about a funny series. I started my first book, The Gigantic Giraffe with Grit, a year ago, and I got it on Amazon. And around a week during the holidays, it hit it became number 7 and then number 2 on a children's inspirational category and bestseller, which is a really, really hard category to get into. And that just gave me the green light that I was on the right path with this. So I published this, and now currently I'm publishing the second book in the series. Obviously, Gertie got a little bit of a facelift, so I I did these with initially I drew with a colored pencil, and I moved on. I got with like Gertie, I learned in life, from I got better and better, and the illustrations are all digital. And it's called Gertie Braves the River. This is the one I'm working on now. It's not out. It's currently on Kickstarter. I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign on it. And basically, what happens when a giraffe named Gertie faces a challenge that feels too big to be conquered, right? So she's an unsure giraffe. She's shy about herself, but she always finds the courage to take little steps and make things happen. So that's the stories that I work on, and it's a little theme that I've been working on for the longest time, and I'm going to follow it and see where the rabbit hole ends up with this.
That is great. What kind of audience are you looking for with your book? Age?
In general, the age group is from 3 to 4 to 8 or 9. So obviously the first one feels a little bit more for a younger audience because it's very, very simple and the drawings are more simplistic, but the young kids like it. With my second book, the audience moves up to 5, 6, 7, and 8. Not because the reading is more complicated, it's the same level, but I guess the illustrations look more pumped, I guess, more, visually interesting. So, but in general, both of them, I would say the age group as far as 8 or 9 years old.
And for you, what are your books teaching?
The mission that I'm hoping to hit on target is I love to empower children through my illustrations and my manuscript and my story. I love to empower kids to develop confidence and resilience, and notice that and find them in the most funniest situations. I always say whether you're 3 or 83, if you have the time to slow down and smile a little and have a twinkle in your eye, you'll figure out life can be art, kind of like my funny giraffe. And a lot of times they say, when you write a children's book, first of all, when you write a novel, they say you read it one time. A children's book will be read 1,000 times between a parent and a child. And I think children's books, you're speaking to two audiences. A real successful one, you're talking to a child, because ultimately that's the one that's going to find interest in it. But the purse is always the parent, and the parent won't pick up a child's book unless they see that there's something of value other than just because there's a lot of stuff out there. I'm not going to comment. There's a trend for a lot of things, but when a parent sees that there's a nostalgic thing that they can find that reminds them of their childhood, it speaks to them. Then there's kind of like double duty when you're writing a children's book. You got to speak to the parent because they're both reading it, and the child. And the stories are pretty much distilled down issues, situations, obstacles that I find myself on a daily basis on my 9 to 5 with my work responsibilities. I try to distill them down to the most simplest of stories that a child can understand and give value back to society. The way I got it took me 40 plus years to get it. And I just like to, make them as simple as I can that a child can understand them. I guess they say when you can explain it to a child, your teaching is, you got good teaching there.
Now, where can my audience find either of these books if they want to dive in also?
The Gigantic Giraffe with Grit is on Amazon currently, and it's in Barnes & Noble on their online store. As for Gertie Braves the River, the second book in the series, that's currently on Kickstarter. So if your audience goes to Kickstarter and types in Gertie Braves the River, they'll see it. It's launching on Tuesday, but you can log in and hit the notify button, and it'll keep people notified about when it's coming up. I always tell people, even if you don't want to buy it itself, just by logging in, which is free, you hit the notification button to notify you. That tricks the algorithm, just moves the book further up on the page, and it's seen by more parents. So even if you don't want to buy it, you can move it up in a ranking and somebody else might buy it. So that always helps.
All right. And then tell me, I hear you have a freebie for my audience.
Sure. I sure do. I'm all about giving value back. If your audience goes to adventurebooks.com, that is my landing page. They'll be able to get the Gigantic Giraffe with Grit the ebook version for free and the coloring pages for free for this book.
Awesome. That is amazing. That's so great. Thank you
Sure.
so much for that. As the parents now can have, I love that it's even another step. So now they can even color at the table, while you're, debriefing with your kid and just talking with them and spending that quality time that hopefully that this is doing. Do you have any last words for our audience about just books and how important they are to you and how they can really shape a parent into being better?
The more books, the better. You don't have to go out of pocket to be able to do that. I'll give you guys some tidbits. You can, I mean, even if you go to your local thrift store, I found the most amazing people drop off the craziest things. You can find hard copies for like $1 and soft copies for 50 cents. So you can have a gigantic library with books for a fraction of the cost. And the more the merrier when parents and the child share that bedtime story together. I think that's the most magical thing in the world, because that's the initial stage. I think prior to a kid going even to school and learning their ABCs and writing, that is their initial entrance into reading and writing, even though they're not understanding much, but just by sharing that moment with a picture book, that gets them along the way. That's the start.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to tell the audience, go and check it out. I'll leave those links inside the Impactful Parent app so that you can just, bam, click it, check out the books, check out the coloring page, and support Lewis, because this is on a great mission to help our kids learn all kinds of really good lessons. So thank you for being here. I'm glad you decided to be here today. Begin your Impactful Parent journey by downloading the Impactful Parent app. The Impactful Parent app is free so that you can carry help, tips, and parenting resources right in your pocket. Discover answers to your parenting questions and download the app today. Just go to your phone's app store and discover how you can step up your parenting game and become a more impactful parent. And remember that this episode is just a small part of what the Impactful Parent offers. Also available are online courses, parent support groups, coaching services, and of course, the Impactful Parent app. Find out more by going to theimpactfulparent.com. But until next time, you got this, parents. I'm just here to help. Thank you for listening today. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And don't forget, the Impactful Parenting Podcast is an extension of the Impactful Parent community. Go to the Impactful Parent website and download the free Impactful Parent app so you don't miss a parenting tip that can help you and your family. Thanks for listening today. So go to theimpactfulparent.com and see you next episode.